Other punctuation marks. End punctuation, the period. Use a period to end all sentences except direct questions or genuine exclamations. Also, use periods in abbreviations according to convention. To end sentences. Most sentences should end with a period. A sentence that reports a question, instead of asking it directly, an indirect question, should end with a period, not a question mark. The professor asked whether talk therapy was more beneficial than antidepressants, period. If a sentence is not a genuine exclamation, it should end with a period, not an exclamation mark. After years of research, Dr. Lowe finally solved the equation, period. A period is conventionally used in abbreviations of titles and Latin words or phrases, including time designations for morning and afternoon. Mr., Miss, Doctor, for example, e.g., E period G, etc. period, A dot M dot. If a sentence ends with a period marking an abbreviation, do not add a second period. Do not use a period with postal abbreviation for states. Current usage is to omit the period in abbreviations of organization names, academic degrees, and designations for eras. The question mark. A direct question should be followed by a question mark. What is the horsepower of a 777 engine? Do not use a question mark after an indirect question, one that is reported rather than asked directly. Use a period instead. He asked me who was teaching the math course this year, period. The exclamation point. Use an exclamation point after a word group or sentence to express exceptional feeling or to provide special emphasis. The exclamation point is rarely appropriate in academic writing. When Misha entered the room, I switched on the lights and we all yelled, "Surprise!" Do not overuse the exclamation point. In the fisherman's memory, the fish lives on, increasing in length and weight with each passing year, until at last it is big enough to shade a fishing boat, period. This sentence doesn't need to be pumped up with an exclamation mark. It is emphatic enough without it. The dash, parentheses, and brackets. When typing, use 2 hyphens to form a dash. Do not put spaces before or after the dash. If your word processing program has what is known as an M dash, you may use it instead, with no space before or after it. Use a dash to set off parenthetical material that deserve emphasis. One of music's rising trends, dash, lyrics that promote the use of synthetic drugs, dash, is leading some artists to speak out against their peers. Use a dash to set off appositives that contain commas. An appositive is a noun or noun phrase that renames a nearby noun. Ordinarily, most appositives are set off with commas, but when the appositive itself contains commas, a pair of dashes helps readers see the relative importance of all the pauses. In my hometown, people's basic needs, dash, food, clothing, and shelter, dash, are less costly than in a big city like Los Angeles. A dash can also be used to introduce a list, a restatement, an amplification, or a dramatic shift in tone or thought. Along the walls are bulk liquids, hyphen, sesame seed oil, honey, safflower oil, comma, and that half-liquid peanuts only peanut butter. In his last semester, comma, Peter tried to pay more attention to his priorities, dash, applying to graduate school and getting financial aid. Everywhere we looked, there were little kids, dash, a bag of Skittles in one hand and their mommy or daddy's sleeve in the other. Kieran took a few steps back, comma, came running full speed, comma, kicked a mighty kick, dash, and missed the ball. In the first 2 examples, the writers could also use a colon. The colon is more formal than the dash and not quite as dramatic. Unless there is a specific reason for using the dash, avoid it. Unnecessary dashes create a choppy effect. Parentheses. Use parentheses to enclose supplemental materials, minor digressions, and afterthoughts. Nurses record the patient's vital signs. temperature, pulse, and blood pressure several times a day. So you put into parentheses temperature, pulse, and blood pressure. Use parentheses to enclose letters or numbers labeling items in a series. Rough drafts are likely to contain unnecessary parentheses. As writers head into a sentence, they often think of additional details using parentheses to work them in as best they can. Such sentences usually can be revised to add the details without parentheses. Brackets. Use brackets to enclose any words or phrases that you have inserted into an otherwise word-for-word quotation. Audubon reports that, quotation, if there are not enough young to balance death, at the end of the species, California condor, in brackets, is inevitable. The sentence quoted from the Audubon article did not contain words California condor, since the context of the full article made clear what species was meant, so the writer needed to add the name in brackets. The Latin word sic in brackets indicates that an error in a quoted sentence appears in the original source. According to the review, Adele's performance was brilliant, exceeding, okay, so you need to spell exceeding with E-X-C-E-E-D-I-N-G, so sick, the expectations of even her most loyal fans. Do not overuse sick, however, since calling attention to other mistakes can appear snobbish. The preceding quotation, for instance, might have been paraphrased instead. According to the review, even Adele's most loyal fans were surprised by the brilliance of her performance. The ellipsis. The ellipsis mark consists of 3 spaced periods. Use an ellipsis to indicate that you have deleted words from an otherwise word-for-word quotation. Shute acknowledges that treatment for autism can be expensive. Sensory integration therapy, and then ellipsis, can cost up to $200 an hour. If you delete a full sentence or more in the middle of a quoted passage, use a period before the 3 ellipsis dots. Ordinarily, do not use the ellipsis at the beginning or at the end of a quotation. Readers will understand that the quoted material is taken from a longer passage. In quoted poetry, use a full line of ellipsis dots to indicate that you have dropped a line or more from the poem. Had we but whirled enough and time, this coyness, lady, were no crime. And then ellipsis. But at my back I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near. The slash. Use the slash to separate 2 or 3 lines of poetry that have been run into your text. Add a space before and after the slash. In the opening lines of Jordan, George Herbert pokes gentle fun at popular poems of his time. Who says that fictions only and false hair, and then slash, become a verse? Is there in truth no beauty? 4 or more lines of poetry should be handled as an indented quotation. The slash may occasionally be used to separate paired items such as pass, fail, and producer/director. Do not use a space before or after the slash. Be sparing in this use of the slash. In particular, avoid the use of an, or, he, she, and his, her. Instead of using he, she, and his, her to solve sexist language problems, you can usually find more graceful alternatives. And that's it on mechanics and punctuation. And so if you have any questions about punctuation and mechanics, feel free to email me at any time. And if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to Professor H Writing Channel.